Let's see, today is 11 January, Sunday. I'm Charlie Garrett, and this is the CG Prophecy Report. Just how much asylum do you need? That and a lot of other things to go over on today's report. Okay, before we get started into our Israel news, I want to introduce Linnell and Rhoda Bontrager. They're from Mississippi, and they're here visiting. And first thing I said to him, and he kind of looked shocked, I said, man, that's an old name in Sarasota. We got Bontragers everywhere. We got Bontrager contractors and plumbers. And so you just walk around town and you're going to meet a lot of people with your name. So maybe you'll like them so much, you'll say, well, we're going to move to Sarasota, right? You can have them do their plumbing for you or something, whatever. They're wonderful, wonderful people. I went to school with many Bontragers, and like I said, they've been here as long as I can remember. Probably before the Garretts got here. So, all right. So welcome to you guys. It's a real honor having you here. And Jim said something earlier, and he ought to know better. He said, I'm not going to get into much of the news because Charlie will cover it all that's been happening in the past week. And if it's in the news, I try not to report it because everybody else and every other prophecy update in the country is reporting on the same thing. We know that there are riots. We know that the left is out of control. We know all of those things. And so I select articles that hopefully will be something that maybe you haven't heard, and that way you're not hearing the same thing that other people will be talking about. But having said that, it is unbelievable in 11 days how much has happened. And our president, I was watching something last night, and I just got to say this because this guy was spot on. And we think that, you got that, I almost want to call her a lunatic, but anyway, MTG, she's just not been, I've not been a fan of hers ever. And now she's saying that we don't have MAGA first anymore. It's not America first, and we're doing all these other things. And she's completely wrong. Every single thing that he is pursuing is to make America great. It's not that he's out there doing things like past presidents have, where they've just been exercising influence and trying to, control the world. He's trying to get America great. Who is the largest affected nation because we went in and got Maduro out of Venezuela? What? He says China. Anybody else? What? Canada. They are the ones that are going to suffer the most because of this. Yeah, I would have said China too, but this guy gave a great analysis last night of why Canada, who they no longer have any leverage over America. Zero. We get 4 million barrels of oil from them every day. We don't need it anymore. There are all kinds of reasons. He went through them methodically. This guy had a PhD, and he knew exactly what he was talking about. The things that Trump is doing are to benefit America. And when America is benefited, hopefully the next administration will be favorable to Israel as well. So we'll see what happens. But right now, Israel is still in need of us. I saw an article this morning, and I'll probably include it next week if nothing else happens, but they are going to wean themselves off of America voluntarily in the next 10 years. But for right now, they need a protector, and America is it. So keep these things in mind. You may not like the guy. He may be brash, and he may be offensive in the way he speaks, but he is doing exactly what he said he would do. Every single thing that he has said, I'm going to do that, he has done it and more. So we got some news from Israel, from the Times of Israel. Knesset passes law blocking provision of electricity and water to UNRWA facilities. They kicked them out of one, and now any other facilities, they get no electricity and no water. All right. A law prohibiting the provision of electricity or water to facilities owned or operated by or on behalf of the UNRWA passed its third and final reading, 59-7. There's a lot of libs in the Knesset, but they all agreed on this. The government-backed legislation requires electricity and water providers to withhold or disconnect service from UNRWA facilities, as well as block the provision of communications and banking or financial services to the agency. When you are an agency, and it doesn't matter if you're under the auspices of the UN or not, when you are unfriendly to Israel and you actively work with terrorists to harm Israel, this is what you should expect. The measure is an amendment to two bills passed by lawmakers barring the agency from operating in Israeli territory and curtailing its activities in the Gaza Strip and the West Bank by banning state authorities from having any contact with it. The law clarifies that the provision of electrical and water services should be considered contact under law. The legislation also allows the government to seize properties in Ma'alot Dafna and Kafir Aqab in Jerusalem, which had been leased to the UNRWA by the state and used as the agency's offices, without the need to initiate legal or administrative proceedings. The agency continued to operate for some time after the original bill's passage, but its schools in East Jerusalem were eventually ordered shuttered. Israeli police raided UNRWA offices in the capital earlier this month. I mentioned that a week or two ago, lowering the UN flag and raising an Israeli flag in its place. Addressing the Knesset Foreign Affairs and Defense Committee Chairman Boa Bismuth declared that UNRWA employees were full partners in the brutal massacre they committed against us on October 7th. And that's been borne out. That is not just an accusation, it is the truth. They assisted, murdered, and kidnapped. In practice, UNRWA is an arm of Hamas, terrorists in disguise under the auspices of the United Nations. From the Jerusalem Post, Pentagon announces $8.6 billion Boeing contract for Israel's F-15IA program. The firm fixed price contract will provide funding for design, integration, instrumentation, test, production, and delivery of 25 new F-15IA aircraft for the IAF. The option for the production of 25 additional F-15IA fighter jets is also available under the contract, so they could get 30 of these. Work on the project is set to take place in St. Louis and is expected to be completed in the next 10 years by December 31st, 2035. The purpose of the purchase is to keep Israel's Air Force viable and updated deep into the future in case strikes against Iran or Hezbollah become necessary. The 2035 deadline is a far cry from the original plans to replace Israel's F-15 fleet of aircraft, including the F-15A, B, C, D variants and 25 F-15I variants with special Israeli-made adaptations by 2025 or 2028. So they've got it backed up quite a bit. But I would presume that they're going to get this done quicker. They're not going to delay. They will need these planes, and it's probably going to happen. But we'll see. The old F-15s date back to the late 1970s. Already in 2020, the Israeli defense establishment wanted to start the process of replacing them. However, 6 rounds of elections delayed Israel from placing a clear order with the U.S. and Boeing, and the issue also sat for unexplained reasons during the term of Prime Minister Bennett, which lasted about 2 minutes, and he was a terrible prime minister, but that's okay. In January 2023, the Defense Ministry sent an official LOR for 25 F-15EX fighters from the U.S., Since then, the 2023-2025 Israel-Hamas war stalled the process. Israel then made requests for a number of adjustments to the existing F-15EX, which has led to further delays of the delivery date. I said he was a terrible prime minister, and I stand by that, but he did do one thing that was important in my eyes, because I personally saw Netanyahu becoming comfortable in his job, and he was not being effective the way he was in the past. And he needed a comeuppance, and he got it by Bennett taking over for a while, and he is now understanding his responsibilities more clearly again. I could see that in him, and I mentioned that several times. A lot of people didn't agree with that, but I think that if you look back now and you see the transition he made back to a very strong approach, I think you'd agree with that now. From the Times of Israel, Greece, Israel, and Cyprus to step up joint exercises in eastern Mediterranean. While the rest of the world is hating Israel with a passion, we've got several nations around the world that are united with them, hip and thigh. So it's a great thing, and these three nations are going to be in effect in the years ahead. The three eastern Mediterranean nations have drawn closer over the past decade through joint military drills, defense procurement, and energy cooperation. Developments closely watched by regional rival Turkey. They all have a beef with Turkey, and it's a good alliance here. So Greece's Armed Services General Staff said senior military officials from the three countries signed a joint action plan for defense cooperation in Cyprus. The IDF announced the trilateral deal, saying it would include bilateral work plans between the IDF, Greece's Hellenic Armed Forces, and the Cypriot National Guard, as well as joint exercises and training, working groups across a range of fields, and strategic military dialogue on shared security challenges. Israel's military said Sunday that the newly signed plans were intended to bolster stability, security, and peace in the eastern Mediterranean region. A senior Greek official familiar with the matter said the military deal would encompass joint naval and air exercises and the transfer of know-how from Israel to Greece and Cyprus to address both asymmetrical and symmetrical threats. So there you go. Very good stuff from Israel. We got some news from Christianity today. This one is very disturbing to me personally, and the reason why may not be what you think it is, but it will tell us a couple of different things. Mail Online, popular Christian author Philip Yancey retires after admitting to 8-year affair. Philip Yancey, the best-selling author whose books on grace and faith shaped generations of believers, announced his immediate retirement after admitting to an 8-year sinful affair with a married woman. In a stunning statement published by Christianity Today, where he served as editor-at-large and columnist for years, Yancey, 76, acknowledged that his private conduct stood in direct conflict with the values he publicly taught for decades. My conduct defied everything that I believe about marriage, he wrote, saying the relationship caused deep pain to his wife, the other woman's husband, and both families involved. Yancey announced he is retiring from writing, speaking, and all online platforms. He confirmed he had removed himself from social media, including Facebook and his Substack page, cutting off direct communication with the audience that had sustained his career for half a century. Devastated readers reacted with grief, anger, and a sense of betrayal over the fall of a figure long associated with humility, honesty, and the power of grace. Having disqualified myself from Christian ministry, I am therefore retiring from writing, speaking, and social media. Instead, I need to spend my remaining years living up to the words I have already written. There's a problem with that. I'll give you that in a second. His book sold more than 15 million copies worldwide and reached readers in nearly 50 languages. He says he wants to live up to the words he has already written. I was working in the church here on Thursday and something popped into my head, and so I put it on the board for people to read. It says, "Church, do you want to know what the Bible says, or do you want to know what someone says about the Bible?" What he should have said is, I need to uphold the biblical values that the Bible presents. And instead, he's going to look at his own writings. It's a problem. I know people that have read many of his books. They've read lots and lots of them, and yet they don't read their Bible. Okay, that is a problem. If you are not reading your Bible, and I don't mean once a year or when you are having a bad day and you open it up and you point and you say, I'm going to read this and God's going to give me a sign. Unless you're reading your Bible every single day, you are deficient in your Christianity. That's why we have a Bible, is because it is the way that God communicated to his people, his intentions for us. And I've said this at least 15 billion times, and I do not exaggerate, is that you cannot know, this is impossible, you cannot know God unless you know Jesus Christ. If you think you know God apart from Jesus Christ, you are deluded. Okay, you cannot know God apart from Jesus Christ. He is the one who reveals the Father to us. And you cannot know Jesus Christ. It is impossible. There are like 2 sentences about Jesus outside of the Bible, and I'm not talking about later writings of the Bible, but I'm talking about, well, there was a guy named Jesus in Israel, and, they thought he was a magician. Who said that? I think it was Josephus or something. There are a couple verses or sentences about Jesus outside of the Bible. So you cannot know Jesus at all unless you know this word. 1 + 1 will always equal to in proper theology. It doesn't matter if you're speaking of the Trinity or the deity of Jesus, or if you're speaking about Israel, the end times. 1 + 1 will always equal 2. God is a God of order, logic, and discipline. He gave us this word to know him better. If you are watching prophecy updates, you are spending an hour a week on each update. If you watch 10 of them, you're spending 10 hours of your life watching updates. If you're not reading this 30 minutes a day, then you are doing nonsense instead of what's important. Okay? And that's just a beginning, 30 minutes a day. If you read your Bible 30 minutes a day, you will have read the entire Bible in 154 days. Because an audio Bible is 70 hours, do the math. Okay? You ought to have, if you are a Christian for 20 years, you ought to have read the Bible then 40 times as a minimum. Okay? You also can get audio Bibles and put them in your car, and you can listen to the Bible all day. I drive a couple of miles every day down to a mall that I take care of. I go to the projects once a week, and I come to church twice a week. That's all the driving I do. None of it is more than about 5-8 miles. Down to the project is probably 8 miles. Okay, that's it. I don't drive anywhere. And yet I've listened to the Bible in the past year probably 4 times. It goes so quickly. Now, obviously, you're not learning the same way as when you read, but you're getting the Word of God to fill you. So I would pray that you would want to read the Bible instead of Philip Yancey or anybody else, and you would, pray for this guy. He obviously was doing something, and he probably didn't intend to start doing it either. The thing that I said at the beginning that I will now say to you is that it scared me because I'm a guy, and the same thing that happened to him could happen to me or you. It could happen to anybody. And you don't start out doing something like this, intending, I'm just going to go do this thing. It happens. Life happens to you, and you need to be in the Word and remembering the Lord and talking to him every day, or it can happen to you. From The Guardian, immigration debate dividing us. Incoming Archbishop of Canterbury warns in a Christmas sermon. It's a female, by the way, so they're going down the tube so quickly, and the next article proves it. It was going to be a whole article, and I just give you the title and be done with it because it's insane. Zero Hedge, female British, this is the Church of England, Reverend insists Mary, not Jesus, is the main character of Christmas. And the first thing she said is, I think. It doesn't matter what you think. It doesn't matter what you think, what I think. It doesn't matter. What matters is what the Word of God says. Nothing else matters. Church, do you want to know what the Bible says, or do you want to know what someone says about the Bible? So the people in the Church of England are going to listen to this nonsense woman, and they're going to find out that, oh, Mary is the center of our faith. That's what they're going to learn. That is not a healthy way to be. That is unhealthy. Got some news from the Mideast and Africa today. From Yahoo. After Iraq legalizes child marriage, Baghdad bridal market booms as young girls are sold to older men. I said this was coming, and it's happened. These poor young people. Iraq's decision to introduce the Jafari law in January means that girls can be married based on perceived maturity and physical capacity. Perceived. It doesn't have to be anything legal anymore. Baghdad's bridal industry has seen a massive boom since Iraq legalized child marriage, and human rights organizations have warned that young girls are being auctioned off in black market sales to older men. We're going right back to the relatives of Amani Atwa. I'm not even going to read it because I'll start crying. I just can't. It's terrible how they're treating their own children. From Fox, Iran reportedly developing chemical, biological missile warheads as protests spread over collapsing economy. So their economy is collapsing around them, and they are working feverishly to develop chemical and biological missile warheads. Priorities, folks. The outlet, citing unnamed military and security sources, reported that Iran's IRGC has accelerated work on unconventional missile payloads alongside upgrades to command and control systems. If confirmed, the developments would raise serious alarms in Washington and Israel, and I guarantee you they already have these places marked out for destruction, especially as Tehran struggles to contain growing anger at home. According to Iran International, missile infrastructure has been repositioned and expanded, with some launch assets reportedly moved to eastern Iran to reduce vulnerability. The report claims the IRGC is exploring non-conventional warhead configurations for long-range missiles. This is a dangerous thing to allow them to have this. Tehran has long denied pursuing chemical or biological weapons, insisting its missile program is defensive. Iran is a signatory to the Chemical Weapons Convention. Well, that doesn't matter because they're a signatory to the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, too, though Western governments have reportedly accused the Islamic Republic of violating international norms. The missile report coincides with escalating economic unrest inside Iran. Ynet, this is why Egypt's Sisi, this is a great article. It's a little long, but I hope that you'll appreciate the analysis. This is a commentary somebody wrote for Ynet News, is militarizing the Horn of Africa to spite Israel, encircling Ethiopia. In the immediate aftermath of Israel's historic decision to recognize Somaliland, a dangerous geopolitical shift has gone largely unnoticed by the Western press. While Jerusalem was breaking the diplomatic stalemate in the Horn of Africa with a move toward pragmatism, Cairo was busy finalizing plans to set the Red Sea on fire. Under the cover of diplomatic outrage from the Arab League regarding Somaliland, the Egyptian government has quietly signed military-grade agreements to deploy warships to Eritrea and Djibouti. For years, Sisi was viewed as a pillar of regional moderation. However, Cairo has revealed itself not as a partner in peace, but as a primary arsonist in Africa's most volatile corridor. The specific details of Egypt's new agreements with Djibouti and Eritrea are alarming. Cairo has secured rights to upgrade the port of Assab in Eritrea and the Doraleh port in Djibouti to accommodate destroyers and troop carriers from Egyptian Southern Fleet. This is not a commercial venture. It is a kinetic encirclement. Today, facing the reality that the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam is a fait accompli, Cairo has resorted to gunboat diplomacy. What that means is they have this dam that's upstream of Egypt, and so they are now at the mercy of the people that have that dam, and they're trying to do an end around that. Everything over there could go south very quickly. However, I've said this, I'll stop before I go on, and I've said they need to be careful with Israel. Egypt needs to be careful with Israel for one reason, and that is the Aswan Dam. Because if they ever come and attack Israel, and they know this, and Israel certainly told them this, if you attack us, the Aswan Dam will be obliterated. And when it is, you as a nation will cease to exist. If you want to see where Egyptians live, you just follow the Nile. That's it. Just follow the Nile, and they're along the Nile and the Nile Delta. There's nobody else anywhere. Satellite photos, you don't see anything at night except that. They would cease to exist as a nation that day. So they know this, but they are trying to work around these things. Cairo has resorted to gunboat diplomacy. By placing elite commandos and naval assets on Ethiopia's logistical flanks, Egypt is moving from a dispute over water quotas to an active threat against a sovereign nation's economic lifelines. This military aggression explains Cairo's hysterical reaction to Israel's recognition of Somaliland. The Egyptian foreign minister has issued furious condemnations, rallying Turkey and Djibouti to reject the move as a violation of international law. Why is Egypt, a nation that claims to oppose Islamist radicalism, condemning the recognition of Somaliland, a stable, democratic, and secure buffer against the al-Shabaab terror group? The answer is cynical realpolitik. Egypt requires a unified Somalia not because it cares about Mogadishu's sovereignty, but because a fractured Somalia allows Egypt to manipulate the weak central government against Ethiopia. Israel's recognition of Somaliland validates the very entity that Ethiopia sought to partner with for sea access. By legitimizing Somaliland, Israel has unwittingly handed Ethiopia a diplomatic lifeline, effectively neutralizing Egypt's strategy of containment. I don't think Israel was caught off guard by this at all. I think that they knew what they were doing and they were ahead of the game. The Red Sea is already choked with Houthi terrorism. The introduction of Egyptian warships into Eritrean and Djiboutian waters adds a combustible layer of state-on-state friction to a waterway that handles 12% of global trade. Egypt is playing a zero-sum game. Its red line regarding the Nile has morphed into a Red Sea blockade strategy. By embedding its military into the logistical hubs of Djibouti, which handles 95% of landlocked Ethiopia's trade, Cairo is signaling its willingness to strangle Ethiopia economically. This forces Addis Ababa into a corner where military breakout becomes a viable survival strategy. And now there's a monkey in that wrench because of Israel. And it's a good monkey from Mongolia. The week, 8 incredible destinations to visit in 2026. I'm going to let you guess which country is on this list. Anybody? Mongolia. How did you know? How did you know? Here they are. Botswana, Cappadocia, Turkey, Egypt, Gothenburg, Sweden, Guadalajara, Mexico, Sardinia, Uluru, Australia, and Mongolia. The East Asian country filled with remote, untouched landscapes and one of the world's last nomadic cultures stands apart. Mongolia is a rare example of how a country can embrace tourism without compromising its identity. That means offering visitors authentic experiences like riding reindeer with the Tsa'atan community, witnessing the speed and agility of Kazakh hunters and their golden eagles, and crossing the Gobi on a camel. Yes, I'm ready for that. I am taking my next vacation to Mongolia. Seeing as how I'm never taking a vacation again, I'm probably not going to Mongolia. I'm now at 5 years and 6 months of not taking a day off, a single day. One of these days I'm just going to keel over in my oatmeal and that'll be the end of me. Daniel 12 technology today, Zero Hedge. Researchers successfully reverse Alzheimer's in mice. Peer-reviewed study says. The study research, and this is real close to home for me because my wife was in the Alzheimer's section as a nurse for years. I walked in there one time and I couldn't take any more. I could not believe the chaos going on in the minds of these poor people. I could not believe it. So there is hope now. In the study, researchers treated 2 groups of mice with P7C3A20. That was where I went wrong. I went with the A21 model and it didn't work. So, okay, a pharmacologic agent. One group carried human mutations related to amyloid processing, while the other carried a tau protein mutation. Both amyloid and tau pathologies are 2 major early events of Alzheimer's. Among the amyloid mice, treatment with P7C3A20 was found to have resulted in restoring the proper balance of nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide, which is a cellular energy molecule and a major driver of Alzheimer's disease. As people age, NAD+ levels decline in their bodies, including the brain. Without proper NAD+ balance, the cells are unable to execute critical processes necessary for proper brain functioning. The treatment was found to have reversed blood-brain barrier deterioration, DNA damage, oxidative stress, and neuroinflammation, researchers wrote. It doesn't just stop it, it reverses it. The blood-brain barrier maintains nutrient and hormone levels in the brain while protecting the organ from toxins and pathogens. The treatment enhanced synaptic plasticity and hippocampal neurogenesis, a process in which new functional neurons are generated. These changes resulted in full cognitive recovery and reduction of plasma levels. So they got their full brain thinking back. That's unbelievable for the p-tau 217 among the amyloid mice. Researchers said the p-tau 217 is the clinical biomarker of Alzheimer's that helps predict cognitive decline. In fact, when P7C3A20 was initiated for a 6-month-old mice, as they manifested advanced Alzheimer's pathology and cognitive deficits, the treatment comprehensively restored brain health and function by 12 months. P7C3A20 reversed advanced Alzheimer's in mice and tau mutation and was found to help protect the human brain microvascular endothelial cells from oxidative stress. This BMEC is the major component of the blood-brain barrier. Our results challenge the long-held view that it is intrinsically irreversible. They no longer believe that. They said that restoring the proper balance of NAD plus levels may be a potentially transformative therapeutic approach. That is real encouraging. I got to tell you, that's just wonderful. We got a dangerous world, including the inevitable plagues the book of Revelation speaks of. From Just the News, ex-War Department official warns terrorists may one day aerosolize fentanyl, praises Trump's move. Okay, how do they know this? This is interesting. I had forgotten about this. Former Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for Countering Weapons of Mass Destruction, that's a long title, David F. Lassiter, praised President Trump's declaration this past month of fentanyl as a weapon of mass destruction, saying it would create powerful new tools to fight the current drug cartel's scourge that has killed hundreds of thousands of Americans and would equip U.S. security agencies to counter future efforts to create an aerosolized fentanyl weapon that could kill millions. Lassiter noted that Russian security forces in 2002, this is what I had forgotten, I remember this now, inadvertently killed 130 hostages during an alleged Chechen terrorism incident when they pumped a gas form of fentanyl into a building, hoping to anesthetize the terrorists, but made the formula too strong as to be lethal to many. The Russian incident gives terrorists or other bad actors a template for a possible aerosolized fentanyl bomb, especially 2 decades later when the precursor chemicals are far more available because of the drug cartel's mass production. If you think about that form of a weaponization standpoint, if an aerosolized form like that was used to poison water supplies or even food, it is significant. And we've seen with the proliferation of other illicit materials and those that could be made into weapons of mass destruction, it is a significant thing. I'm glad that Trump has taken the actions he has, because that could be really bad. Gateway Pundit, Cleveland Clinic flu shots study shows vaccine increased risk of getting flu. It doesn't decrease it, it increases it. The study addressed potential biases. Vaccinated employees were more likely to get tested, but the proportion of positive tests was similar between groups, suggesting the higher infection rate wasn't due to testing differences, but actual increased susceptibility. Get your flu shots today, kids. From the Post-Millennial, Canadian prisoners opt for government-assisted suicide rather than living behind bars. They banned capital punishment in Canada. But by default, they are allowing capital punishment and they're encouraging it in Canada. That is a sad, sad place to be. From Fox, Cuba sees 185 times more preventable deaths due to failed healthcare system than the regime admits. And it's going to get worse now because we've cut Venezuela off from them. It's going to get bad unless they come in line. ABC, U.S. measles cases surpass 2,000, highest in 30 years. So they got everybody scared about 2,000, CDC says. And I checked, Israel in this year had 2,100. And I think that there's a lot more Americans than there are Israelis. And then, what was it? Mongolia reported a couple of months ago, like 14,000 cases in a country of 1 million people. So don't listen to these people when they try to scare you. Most of these cases were illegals. Yes. Morality. Gateway Pundit. Algerian woman, 27, arrested in Alicante for causing, this is the mindset of these people, causing severe eye injuries to her 2-year-old son with an irritating liquid to access greater social benefits.
Oh, wow. Oh.
Can you imagine that? That's the culture that they're bringing into their country. Zero Hedge, black privilege. Canadian judge reduces sex offender sentence over his race. Wow. He raped 2 women. He said, well, we're just going to lower it down to nothing. The Post-Millennial, season 5 episode featuring... I don't want to read that. That's gross. Got some other news. The Post-Millennial. New York City poised to force landlords to sell private property to nonprofits to ensure affordable housing. That is not going to go over well. That is going to go over very poorly. This is the beginning of a very bad time for New York City. Like I said, though, They've got the momentum right now. And so New York City is going to go up like this, and people are going to say, oh, everything's fine. And they're going to vote more people in, and then it's going to tank, just like it has everywhere in the world since this ideology was, more people have been killed by communism than any other ideology in the history of the world, including Islam. In the scenario that is passed, New York City will have the largest COPA program in the country. The act forces landlords to offer their property to the city as well as nonprofits before the building can be sold on the public market. Well, sounds fair at first, but the act dictates that landlords must first tip off government entities and nonprofits that qualify and may not take any action that will result in the sale of such covered property to a person other than those entities. That's the first thing. Then the owners must sit on that property for 25 days, almost an entire month, as it is up for sale to the nonprofits, which can submit a statement of interest. If the statement of interest is submitted to the property owner, the nonprofit entity then has 80 days, almost 3 months, to submit a first offer. Only after rejecting any offer from the nonprofit during those 80 days would the owner then be able to list the property for public sale. That, however, is not the end of the red tape. If there is an offer from the private market submitted after a building owner refused an offer from a nonprofit, the owner must then inform the nonprofit so that the nonprofit can offer a matching price on identical terms of the private offer and has 15 days to do so. This is not going to be healthy, folks. The terms of the law are only satisfied for the owner if that nonprofit or other entity under the law declines to match the private offer or fails to close on the deal. COPA will make New York City an affordable housing wasteland and trigger the extinction of small owners. This government-engineered scheme sanctions politically connected nonprofit housing slumlords and predatory developers to snatch private property at depressed values from hard-working small owners, many immigrants, multi-generational families that have invested their blood, sweat, and life savings into their buildings. Socialization of housing is just the beginning. That is going... What's that?
They're choking him out.
That is going to kill New York City. People are not going to want to be a part of that anymore. From the Gateway Pundit, it's official. Tim Walz's 20-week paid leave program now in effect, open to illegals and non-citizens. 20 weeks. Under the law signed by Waltz, employees in Minnesota will be eligible for up to 12 weeks of medical leave and 12 weeks of family leave, up to 20 weeks total per year with partial wage replacement paid out of a state-mandated payroll tax on employers and employees. Mail Online, U.S. military tests revolutionary long-range strike system from attack helicopters as World War III fears mount. The United States Marine Corps has tested a groundbreaking long-range strike system for its attack helicopters. Over the Atlantic Test Range, the Marines launched the cutting-edge Red Wolf weapon from an AH-12 Viper helicopter, striking a sea-based target with pinpoint precision. Developed by L3 Harris, Red Wolf is a modular high subsonic missile that can relay targeting data and engage distant targets, giving helicopters capabilities once reserved for much larger platforms. Current helicopter-fired weapons like AGM-114 Hellfire and the Joint Air-to-Ground Missile Medium Range are limited to roughly 21 miles and 10 miles, respectively, while Red Wolf can reach approximately 230 miles. That's 10 times the amount of space, all at low altitudes. The successful test marks a major leap forward in the Marine Corps' long-range attack missile program, demonstrating a next-generation system that dramatically extends helicopter strike range. In a potential Pacific conflict, the system could temporarily disrupt a warship's sensors, opening a window for follow-on strikes by larger weapons such as the long-range anti-ship missile or the Joint Strike Missile. The turbojet-powered vehicle measures around 6 feet in length and features fold-out fins for stability and control. It can also carry payloads weighing up to 25 pounds. Industry reports indicate that Red Wolf is slated for initial operational deployment in 2026. That's coming right away, folks, as the Marine Corps and Pentagon move to expand their stockpiles of cost-effective long-range strike and reconnaissance systems in preparation for potential high-end conflicts. 230 miles. You know, the problem with helicopters is you can hear them from a million miles away. Now you won't hear anything. Politico. The Trump administration's plan to close a huge loophole in legal immigration. The DHS, what did I call this today? Just how much asylum do you need? The DHS is asking courts to summarily dismiss asylum claims without a hearing and send migrants to a third country where they can pursue relief, even if they have no connection to that place. The federal government is relying on so-called safe third country agreements Trump officials have reached with a number of nations. We just added the Dominican just this week, including Uganda, Honduras, and Ecuador. The effort represents the latest attempt by the Trump admin to curtail immigration to the United States and meet its ambitious annual deportation goal of 1 million people. And it comes as asylum claims have increased significantly. There were 900,000 asylum claims in fiscal year 2024. They come to the border and they say, I want asylum, right? Up roughly 200,000 per year during Trump's first term. Asylum was not designed to provide people a backdoor way to get to a country of their choosing. If the U.S. is confident that they can be successfully removed to another country where they will not be threatened, then there's no reason or expectation that they should be allowed to remain here. The Trump admin strategy was bolstered in October when the Justice Department's Board of Immigration Appeals, an administrative body that oversees immigration courts, said judges should weigh third country removal before an asylum case is considered in the U.S. If they can be asylum somewhere else, why do they have to be here? And if these countries are willing to take them at our expense, they don't need to be here. And that is a smart move, and it's great guy, man. He's thinking things through. The Post-Millennial, just 13% of homes destroyed in LA fires. 13%, it's been 1 year now. 1 year, this week. 13% of homes destroyed in LA fires have a permit, not rebuilt, have a permit to rebuild as lawsuit claims endangered plants hindered firefighting efforts. These people are trying to get their permits, and the developers are saying, no, that's got a little shrub that we can't destroy there. Well, what do you think the fire did? It went in there and destroyed everything because they didn't clear out the brush, which caused the fire in the first place. So this is California in a nutshell. I can tell you that it's been longer since Helene and Milton hit Sarasota, Florida. We got hit in October of the year before that fire. And everything is rebuilt on CST. There are a few houses that, empty lots, they were torn down and they're for sale. But other than that, the permits were issued immediately for everybody to rebuild. All they had to do was get a contractor and they issued the permit immediately. Everything's rebuilt. Gateway pundit. Trump administration sues Virginia for giving illegal aliens in-state tuition while American taxpayers foot the bill. The Post-Millennial. Charlottesville ends license plate cameras. License plate cameras. We're not going to have these anymore up in North Carolina, Charlottesville. Why? Over fears data could be used to identify illegal migrants. Olive Press revealed more than 3,000 migrants died trying to reach Spain on small boats in 2025. They literally murdered these people by allowing them to come without any protections. Just open our borders, come on up, and then they die in the trip. And that's what happened with Biden. That article I read you last year. Thousands and thousands of people dead in the Panama area that just died because they couldn't make it through the passage. The Post-Millennial. Massachusetts official releases 39 convicted murderers who were sentenced to life without parole. We're just going to let them out. They're out on the street walking around. Zero Hedge. Yale no longer has a single Republican professor across 27 departments. Okay, who said it? We'll get off of that nonsense. Something fun. Who said it? The only place success comes before work is in the dictionary. No, Vince Lombardi, believe it or not. Yeah, Okay, before I go on, we got two people named Rhoda here. So they and their husbands are excluded from this question. Can anybody tell me the chapter in which Rhoda is mentioned in what book and chapter? No, you don't count. Anybody? Book? Acts chapter 12, verse. She got it. Rhoda got it. 13. Okay. All right. Got a lesric here for you. Should illegals have option to stay or ship out from the U.S. of A? Trump says they should go to third countries, and to do it without more delay. Okay, I got two ironies and we'll be done. The first one is Mail Online. Yeah, this is ironic and it's very happy, okay? Mom goes in for surgery on a giant tumor in her womb when stunned medics uncover full-term 8-pound baby boy. Gateway Pundit. Biden administration owes Trump. The Biden administration owes Trump a $25 million bounty for catching Maduro. He had a bounty on him and Trump did it. He owes him $25 million. Such is the world in which we live. So from Sarasota, Florida to Ulaanbaatar, Mongolia, I'm Charlie Garrett and that is your CGE Prophecy Report for the week.